بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله. We're continuing with the early companions who believed in the messenger of God Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala ali. Those early ones, as-sabiqun, the ones who gave everything that they had for Allah and His Messenger sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala ali. Last time we were together, we looked at the life of Abu Dharr al-Ghifari radiyallahu anhu wa arda. And today we're looking at an amazing companion, Sayyidina Abdullah Ibn Masud radiyallahu anhu wa arda. And his story is incredible radiyallahu anhu wa arda. His life is incredible radiyallahu anhu wa arda. And really, the story of all of these men and women is a story of love. Their love for Al-Habib sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi, how the Messenger of God sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi was the center of their universe, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi, and how that love transforms and moves and causes them to move mountains. And that's what Sayyidina Abdullah Ibn Masud radiyallahu anhu wa arda was, and he did. He was a man who was a simple man. He didn't come from a noble family of Quraysh, and he was a sheep herder. And he, radiyallahu anhu wa arda, used to herd sheep for a man by the name of Uqba ibn Abi Mu'ayt. And Uqba ibn Abi Mu'ayt was someone who showed enmity at one point to the Messenger of God sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi. And we're going to discuss it. But Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, he tells this story himself. He says, one day I was a young man taking care of the sheep of Uqba. And the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi came, and he came with him Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu wa arda. And the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala asked me, do you have any milk that we can drink? And Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, he said, look, I'm not the owner of these sheep. I'm just working here. Look at his truthfulness. He says, I can't give you any of this milk because it's not mine. So the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala ali asks Abdullah ibn Mas'ud to bring him a sheep that has no milk inside it, in its udder. And the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala ali, he put his blessed hand, this is in front of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, on that sheep, and all of a sudden it was filled with milk. Now Sayyidina Abdullah is looking at this and he's in shock. What's going on? This man just came to me asking me for some milk with Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu anhu arda. I told him we don't have any, I can't give it to you. And all of a sudden he's touching one of my sheep and it's being filled with milk and he's drinking from it. Sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi. But the miracle of the Prophet alayhi salam doesn't stop there. As the narration tells us, after he drinks alayhi salam, and after Sayyidina Abu Bakr drinks radiyallahu anhu arda, the Prophet speaks to the udder, and he tells it, return to the state that you were in. And it all empties out. Look at the miracles associated with Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi. He touches things and they transform. He speaks to things sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi and they transform. Now imagine the transformation of our hearts when we have the mahabba, the love of the Prophet ﷺ filled inside of us, and we follow what he told us to do. And that's what happened to Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, because right away when he saw that, he converted and he became a Muslim. Radiallahu anhu wa arda. And he says, لَقَدْ رَأَيْتُنِي سَادِسَ سِتَّةٍ مَا عَلَى الْأَرْضِ مُسْلِمٌ غَيْرُنَا. That when I became a Muslim, I was the sixth of six. And there were no other Muslims on earth other than us. That's how early his Islam was, radiyallahu anhu wa arda. That's how early he was. And he was a muhib, he was a lover of the Messenger of God, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi. And he put his life in the khidmah, in the service of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. He used to hold the siwak of the Prophet. The Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi used to tell us, and he told us in a hadith, I don't want to cause difficulties to my ummah. If not wanting to cause difficulties to my ummah, I would لأمرتهم بالسواك. I would have ordered them to use the siwak. And so he sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi before every prayer used to use the siwak. And who would hold his siwak? Abdullah ibn Masud, radiallahu anhu wa ardah. He was a carrier of the siwak of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi. And every time the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi took off his sandals, Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Masud would hold on to them. And the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi would sit, and Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Masud radiallahu anhu wa ardah would clutch the sandals of the Messenger of God sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi. And he was the holder of the cushion of the Messenger of God alayhi salatu wasalam. Anytime the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam would sit, Sayyidina Abdullah would have a cushion that he would give the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi that he could lean on. Look at his love for the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. He didn't want to just be connected to the physical being of the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi. He wanted to be connected to anything that the Messenger of God sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi was connected to. Everything that was in the vicinity of Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi was special to Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Masud. And Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Masud was special to the Messenger of God sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi. One day, the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi tells Sayyidina Abdullah to climb a tree and get him something. And this is narrated in the books of hadith. أمر النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم عبد الله بن مسعود أن يصعد شجرة فيأتيه منها بشيء. The Prophet ﷺ ordered Abdullah to climb a tree to get something for him. Now Sayyidina Abdullah was a petite man, and he had what you would call very scrawny legs, and his ankles were very thin. And so as he's climbing the tree, the other Sahaba that are around, the Messenger of God, ﷺ, they're looking at the legs of Sayyidina Abdullah, and they start laughing and making fun of him. And the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi, he says, are you laughing from his legs? Are you making fun of him? And he says, by Allah, the legs of Abdullah, أثقل في الميزان من أحد, are heavier in the scales with Allah than Uhud. That's the greatness of Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Masud. He took the Quran directly from the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi. He was from the Qurra of Al-Madina Al-Munawwara and Mecca Al-Mukarrama. He was from the Fuqaha of Medina Al-Munawwara. And the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi kept him very close. And imagine this scene. I just want us all to think about this as narrated to us in the hadith. The Sayyidina Abdullah bin Mas'ud, one day he's with his Habib, he's with his beloved Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi, and the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi says, Ya Abdullah, iqra' alayya, read to me, read the book of Allah. And Sayyidina Abdullah says, Aqra'u alayk wa alayka unzil. Can you imagine the Prophet's telling him, Ya Abdullah, read to me, read the Quran to me. And Sayyidina Abdullah saying, O Messenger of God, I read to you, and you're the one that the Quran was revealed to? And the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi, he says, I like to hear it from other than me. Look at the companionship, the suhbah, the brotherhood. Yes, the Prophet ﷺ could have recited himself, and that recitation would have moved the heart of Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Mas'ud and moved the world around him, but he wanted to give Abdullah ibn Mas'ud the honor of reciting to Al-Habib sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi. And Sayyidina Abdullah says, فَقَرَأْتُ النِّسَاء حَتَّى إِذَا بَلَغْتُ. He said, and I read from Surah Nisa until I got to the verse, فَكَيْفَ إِذَا جِئْنَا مِنْ كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ بِشَهِيدٍ وَجِئْنَا بِكَ عَلَى هَؤُلَاءِ شَهِيدًا فَقَالَ النَّبِيُّ صلى الله عليه وسلم كُفْ. He said, I read to the verse of Surah Nisa, how will it be on that day, the day of judgment, when we bring a witness from every nation, and we bring you, O Muhammad, as a witness over all of these. And the Prophet ﷺ, when Sayyidina Abdullah got to that verse, he told him, stop here. And Sayyidina Abdullah says, I raised my head, and I looked, and I saw tears coming down from the eyes of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi, intimate moments that the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi had with someone who entered the deen of Allah at a very early time, and someone who loved the Messenger of God sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi. Sayyidina Abdullah Ibn Masud radiallahu anhu wa arda was a mountain of the mountain of believers. And it's through him that this beautiful religion and through the likes of him came to you and I. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.